Hey guys, welcome back to lesson number 9 that deals with the Spanish-American War, yellow journalism, and the reliability of the media. This is the assignment that you're going to find in Empower. As always, please put your first name, last name, and period at the top. What we're going to do here is we're going to take a look at the directions. I'll read through them. Then we'll take a look at the assignment kind of as its whole, and then we'll do the example portion so that you can see what you're expected to be able to do. So let me start with the directions here. Today, you are presented with two news stories published on the same day about the same event from different news sources. One source is reliable, meaning it's trustworthy, and the other isn't. Your task today is to determine which source is credible, that is to say reliable, and explain why. Through the course of this activity, you will meet the learning target by sourcing and inferring things about the document that the document does not say. A series of questions and, quote, reading between the lines of the documents will help guide you as you determine which source is the untrustworthy one. After reading each source, complete all boxes in the chart beneath the documents. As always, questions are in yellow. Sources 1 and 2 below are completed. We're going to complete them here now. For you as an example of what you are asked to do with documents A and B on your own. You are able to see written examples below and see here how they were completed in this video that you're seeing here, posted in Empower. So basically, what you're going to get is a bunch of questions designed to help you infer things. They're designed to help you figure out those things between the lines, to help you determine which of these is reliable and which isn't. Basically, instead of having you read both sources and having you decide, hey, which one is reliable and which one isn't, we're going to have you answer some questions to help you get to that answer. Okay, so first up is source 1 and 2, and you can see that I have some stuff highlighted in both of them. And you can see, as always, we have vocabulary on the sides, so if there's any words that are going to stump us up here that are bolded, we'll be able to find the definitions of those over there. And then here's the chart. As always, questions are in yellow, so we're answering each question for source 1 and for source 2. So the first question here, what is the source's point of view on how the Korean War started? So how does it see or its perspective on what started the Korean War? Next up, we have for a 3.0, what is the format of this source? That is to say, what is it? For example, is it a song, a speech, a journal entry? Again, if you're confused on what format or point of view is, please revisit the other video. It explains and gives some examples of those things. Okay. Next up, for a 3.0, based on what this source is, your answer in the box above. So for example, if you say it's a speech, if you say it's a cartoon, whatever. So based on what you say the source is, what audience was this source written for? So if you know what it is, you can start to figure out, hey, who is it written for? Okay. Next up, for a 3.0, what impact do the word choices highlighted in light blue have on how you understand the document? So you can see here, only one of them has things in light blue. So in this case, we would pretty much leave the other one blank, right? Because there's nothing in source 2 that's light blue. So we're just going to leave that one blank there. For a 3.0, what is the purpose, that is to say why the source was created, of this source? So why was this particular source created? What purpose does it serve? Hint, careful attention to the parts highlighted in pink will help you with answering this. So I gave you a little bit of a hint there. All right. For a 3.0, which of these sources is more reliable? You can see here that we're away from this 2 box because we're not answering this for each document, but rather as a total. Between the 2 documents, which of these is more reliable? Okay. Next, it says, explain why the other source is unreliable. So for instance, if you say that source 1 is reliable, why is source 2 unreliable? Okay. And it's asked that you give at least 2 examples from the text of the document to support your reasoning. Well, I noticed this word, I noticed the way it says this, I noticed that. It leads me to believe that it's not very reliable. Okay, then it says, please complete the chart for document A and B below on your own. So this entire chart here is what we're going to be doing as a sample. And then basically you're going to repeat the exact same thing. Here are 2 different sources, right? Document A, pretty short. All the words that you might need are over here. Here's document B, same kind of thing. All the words over here. You can see that certain things are highlighted different colors, so you might be asked some questions about that because I'm trying to draw your attention to certain things. Okay? And you have basically the exact same questions, right? What is the document's point of view, in this case, with what happened with the USS Maine? Document A says this, document B says that. What is the format of the document? Based on what the document is, so whatever format you said, who is the audience for this document? Right? For 3.0, what impact do the word choices highlighted in light blue have? What is the purpose? Which of these documents is more reliable? And explain why the other document is unreliable. Right? So it's basically exactly what we're going to do. Now, here you get a nice big bold warning. Stop if you are satisfied with the 3.0. You're done. If you wish to challenge yourself for the 3.5 or the 4.0, please continue below. I'm not going to go over these questions. They're here and they're pretty clear. You can see that there are 2 here for a 3.5 and 2 for a 4.0. The expectation is that for the 4.0, you basically do all of them, and for a 3.5, you do the ones marked 3.5. It's not just about doing them. They also do have to be done well and done correctly, and these can be a little bit more challenging. So please be aware that if you're aiming for that, these questions do get a little bit harder. All right, I'm going to take us back to the top, and we're going to go on ahead and work through source 1 and source 2. Okay, so the first thing that we need to know, what is the source's point of view on how the Korean War started? So I think that that's going to be pretty straightforward as we read these. So we'll start with source 1. Upset by the fast and astonishing growth of the power of North Korea, the American invaders hastened the preparation of an aggressive war. The American imperialists furiously carried out the war project in 1950. The American invaders, who had been preparing for war for a long time, finally initiated the war on June 25th. That dawn, the enemies unexpectedly attacked the north half of the country, and the war clouds hung over the once peaceful country, accompanied by the echoing roar of cannons. Having passed the 38th parallel, the enemies crawled deeper and deeper into the north half of the country. The invading forces of the enemy had to be eliminated, and threatened the fate of our country and our people to be saved. And so you can see down here, the source has been clearly listed for you. This paragraph or section has been taken from History of the Revolution of our great leader Kim Il-sung, high school, so that tells you it's a high school textbook. Pyongyang, North Korea, Textbook Publishing Company, 1999. So right there, we know that this was published in Pyongyang, North Korea. So this book is a North Korean textbook designed for high school students. If we read this, we can see that they point the finger at the point of view on what started the Korean War pretty clearly here, right? The American imperialists furiously carried out the war project in 1950. The American invaders, who had been preparing for war for a long time, finally initiated the war on June 25th. Okay? So I would go over here, and for source 1, what is the source's point of view on the Korean War? Well, source 1 says that the United States started the Korean War by invading North Korea. Pretty straightforward. One sentence. This is what source 1 says. Source 1 says the United States started the Korean War by invading North Korea. And you can see that up here. The American invaders, the American imperialists furiously carried out the war project, and the American invaders who had been preparing for war finally initiated or started the war on June 25th. So this textbook claims, hey, the United States started the war. All right? Over here we have, what is the format of the source? What is it? We identified this as sort of a North Korean high school textbook. And the way that we came to that conclusion is this part down here in yellow, where it says source, History of the Revolution, high school, Pyongyang, North Korea. So we know this is a North Korean high school textbook. Okay? Pretty straightforward. This isn't even really a sentence. You're just saying what it is. It's a newspaper article. It's a book. It's a textbook. It's a speech. Whatever it is. Okay? So 3, based on what the source is, your answer in the box above. So based on the fact that this is a high school textbook for North Korean students, what audience was the source written for? Well, I basically just answered that because we know it's a high school textbook. This source was written to teach North Korean high school students the history of their country and the Korean War. Right? Pretty straightforward again. Like if we know this is a high school textbook, it's pretty clear who the audience is, right? If it's a speech, you might have to be a little bit more careful on who the audience is, right? Who are they speaking to? Is it a church delegation? Is it a bunch of women? Is it voters? Is it Congress? But with this, it's pretty straightforward. High school textbook, written for high school students. Okay? For 3.0, what impact do the word choices highlighted in light blue have on how you understand the document? So let's go back up and take a look at these word choices in light blue. Invaders, hastened preparation of an aggressive war. The American imperialists, which we've talked a little bit about imperialism, but it's listed over here. It's a really negative or mean name for somebody trying to take over your land. So they describe Americans as this mean thing trying to take their land. And they furiously, right? If you look over here, furiously, very violently. They very violently carried out this war project, this plan. And these Americans, man, they're invaders. They're outsiders trying to take us over. And they sort of initiated this war, right? They started the war. So what impact do these words have? Well, I think they have a couple of impacts. First off, they make the United States look really bad, right? Imperialist right here, we've identified as a really negative name for somebody trying to take over. So the fact that they call the Americans or us imperialists is designed to say that we're really bad. This idea that they hastened, right, did it quickly, that it was furious, right, that it was done very violently, and that we started it, that we're invaders. I think this textbook is really designed to make the audience, that is to say North Korean high school students, really hate the United States, right? It's all these negative words, furiously, aggressive, imperialist, invaders. These words are really designed to make North Korean high school students hate the United States. So I think that that's really what I'm going to put here, right? What impact do the word choices highlighted in light blue have on how you understand the document? Well, the document is very biased. And what bias basically means is, B-I-A, there we go. Bias means that it's slanted in its point of view. It's not fair or balanced, but rather it takes one side and focuses only on that side, right? It's not balanced in any way. So we're going to say that the document is very biased, and the word choices in blue attempt to anger North Korean students and make them hate the United States for trying to take over North Korea. Okay? So again, pretty straightforward. This is reading between the lines stuff. All right? This is an inference. Nowhere in the document does it say what the impact of these words in light blue are. Instead, we're sort of left to figure it out. What do these things really mean? Okay? Next up, we have to come up with the purpose. Why was this source created? And it says, hint, careful attention to the parts in pink may help us. So let's take a look at the parts in pink here. Okay? War clouds hung over the once peaceful country, accompanied by the echoing roar of cannons. Textbooks typically don't describe things so excitingly, right? War clouds, they hung over the once peaceful country. They just hung there. And they were accompanied by this echoing roar of cannons. That's not what history books should do. History books should tell you, hey, this happens, then this happens, then that happens. They shouldn't really be that interesting, because the more interesting they are, it means that somebody is sort of exaggerating or saying things that they probably shouldn't, instead of, hey, this happened, then this, then that. And so I think the fact that this textbook uses things like war clouds hung over the once peaceful country, accompanied by this echoing roar of cannons, I think that this is really trying to catch North Korean students' attention, and then those words in blue are really trying to teach these kids that the United States is bad. So I think that that's going to be my answer here, is a mixture of both of those. Sorry, moving a little slow here. Okay, so the purpose of this document is to entertain high school students and make them hate the United States. And that's a little bit similar to what we said about the impact, but that makes sense because the light blue is designed to help you determine what the purpose is, so it makes sense that there's a relationship there. Now the next question, which of these sources is more reliable? We can't really answer that yet because we haven't even taken a look at the second source. So let's take a look at the second one. Okay. This time, the North Korean communists, seeming to offer peaceful negotiations, were instead analyzing the right moment to attack and preparing themselves for it. That's going to be key. So if we read that sentence again, the North Korean communists, seeming to offer peaceful negotiations, were instead analyzing the right moment to attack and prepare themselves for it. So right off the bat, this source is already saying, hey, the North Korean communists were preparing for war, and they're the ones who started it. It's very different than source 1. Okay? So the North Korean communists prepared themselves for war. Finally, at dawn on June 25th, 1950, the North began their southward aggression. So here we see again that North Korea is putting aggression towards the south. So again, this source is blaming North Korea along the 38th parallel. Taken by surprise at the unexpected attacks, the Army of South Korea fought courageously to defend the liberty of the country. The UN denounced the North Korean military action as illegal and as a threat to peace, and a decision was made to help the South. The UN Army constituted the armies of 16 countries, among them the United States, Great Britain, and France, joined by South Korean forces in the battle against the North. Again, if there's any of these words that you may not know, for example, one that stands out to me is denounced, you can come over here and you can see that denounce is to speak loudly against or protest something. So the UN protested or spoke loudly against North Korea's military action. You can use this over here. Remember that these are not alphabetical, they're in the order that they appear. Communist is the first word, and so communist is the first word here. Seeming, first word, so it's over here. Last word, constituted. Hey, look, that's the very last word here. Okay, so let's take a look at this again. What is the source's point of view on how the Korean War started? Well, in this case, source 2 says that North Korea invaded South Korea, right? So these are two very different points of view. They see this event differently. Source 1 says the United States invaded during the Korean War. Source 2 says that North Korea invaded during the Korean War. Okay? So what is this? Well, if we take a look down here, the source says, I have no idea if I'm saying this right, Dujin, Korean History Senior High, so again, high school, Seoul, South Korea. So this is a South Korean textbook, and it's again for high school. So this is a South Korean high school textbook. Okay. Now let's take a look at this. For 3.0, based on what the source is, so we said it's a high school textbook, what is the audience? Well, let's go on ahead and put that forward. It's basically very similar to what we already put, right? The source was written to teach, this time, South Koreans. South Korean, Koran, Kor-E-N, high school students, history of their country and the Korean War. Right? Basically no difference. The only difference is, hey, because this is a textbook for South Korea, the audience is a little bit different. It's South Koreans instead of North Koreans. So what impact do the light blue word choices have on how you see the document? Well, you'll notice there are no light blue choices. So in this case, I'm just going to put, NA, which really stands for, not available, not applicable, does not apply, any of those kinds of things. Okay. So for what purpose? Why was this source created? Careful hint, pay attention to the parts in pink. Well, unfortunately for us, there are no parts in pink, so we're left kind of on our own here. I would say the purpose of this document is to teach South Korean high school students about their history and blame North Korea for starting the Korean War. And again, it's interesting here, North Korea doesn't take responsibility for starting the war. Instead, they blame the United States. And South Korea doesn't take responsibility for starting the war and blames North Korea. So there's some wiggle room there. Okay. Now we have to determine which of these sources is more reliable. Well, are we going to trust the North Korean textbook that uses these words like aggressive, furiously, imperialist, and how these war clouds hung over the peaceful country and the echoing roar of cannons? Are we going to trust that sort of drama and harsh word choice? Or are we going to trust the one that's a little bit more straightforward? Hey, this happens, then this happens, then that happens, right? So first thing, the North Koreans began their southward aggression. hey, this is an unexpected attack, and so the South Koreans fought back to protect their freedom. Then the UN denounced the North Korean military action, and they sent an army to help put it down, right? This happens, then that, then that. This seems to be a little bit more trustworthy than this one that's using these harsh words designed to make you think about the United States negatively, right? Rather than saying, America invaded and did this, this, and this, they focus so heavily on painting us as the bad guy and being entertaining as opposed to telling us what actually happened. So in my mind, it's this, right? Source 2 is more reliable than source 1. I don't really have to say anything more here because it's just asking which source is more reliable. Down here is where I say, explain why the other source is unreliable. So source 1, right, the other source, we said source 2 is the most reliable. Source 1 is more unreliable because its word choices are harsh and designed to make students think a specific way about something instead of telling them the events that happened, right? So they're so much more concentrated on, hey, America is evil, America is imperialist, America is terrible, right? They furiously did this, than explaining what actually happened. And that's a red flag right there. The way that things are written, the words that are chosen, it's an immediate red flag for whether or not I can trust the source, right? If the source says, going back to the example from the other video, Westminster High School's choice was questionable and it was wrong, I'm going to trust that source more and consider their opinion more than the source that comes out and says, Westminster High School did reopening in COVID is deadly and it killed a lot of children. That's an exaggeration, right? Nobody in our district has died from COVID, and so that's an exaggeration designed to make you angry and hate Westminster High School, just like that first source is designed to make you angry at how furious and evil the Americans are and hate the Americans because they attacked your country, right? So language really matters here. So source 1 is more unreliable because its word choices are harsh and designed to make students think a specific way about something instead of telling the events that happened. The other thing that I had sort of identified is, source 1, the part in pink, or rather, source 1 has some language that is designed to be entertaining rather than educational. And it's not that something entertaining can't be educational, but in this case, it's more interested in painting this picture of war clouds hanging over the battlefield or the echoing roar of cannons instead of being educational. And so those, for me, are the dead giveaways. And so you can see that all these questions here are really designed to help you think about these documents by reading between the lines and to get you to this whole thing of which of these documents is more reliable and why. So I'm going to go ahead and leave all this in here. It's an example for you. Okay? On the other side here, this is what you're going to do on your own, right? Document A, document B. You're going to do the exact same thing, basically the same questions, right? Point of view, format, who is the audience because of that format, what impact does the words in light blue have, what is its purpose, which is more reliable, why is it more reliable. This whole thing should take you maybe 25 minutes, 30 minutes tops. I would expect this to really take closer to 15 or 20. So this is sort of a nice short lesson, just designed to get you to think about historical sources and what makes them reliable and reading to things between the lines. Okay? So again, for those of you aiming for the 3.5 of the 4, these questions are down here. And if you're going for that, I assume you're capable of reading the question and taking your best crack at answering it. All right, well, that concludes lesson number 9. Next class, we're going to be taking a look at lesson number 10, which deals with some sources from a different part of history. I can't seem to remember what it is off the top of my head. I'm trying really hard and it's not coming to me. But I can tell you that the lesson after that, right, lesson number 11, deals with you creating a piece of artwork and World War II. So look forward to future lessons. Other than that, thank you guys. Hope you found this video instructive and good luck. If you have questions or need help, ask Mr. Eaton or myself, either in class, by email, or message in Empower. Thanks, guys. Have a good day.